Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, my subject today is religion as fire accelerator. What is this all about? Armed conflicts emerge in the world and historically for various reasons. May they be political or economic competition, water rights, ethnical reasons, or just a lost soccer match like 1969 Salvador against Honduras, or national soccer matches that were lost against each other and people were fighting with weapons against each other, or just misunderstandings. And if add to conflict situations religion, the thesis is the conflict will be entirely bloody, cruel, and violent. First remark, in my statements, I will limit to the both missionating Abrahamitic religions, that means Christianity and Islam. And second remark, in the course of my report, I will show some images, drawings, and photographs that are not appropriate for sensitive personalities. So please verify, and if you want to, please go into the sun for half an hour. So, almost no week passes where you don't hear of fatal attacks in the news for religious reasons. And on the current subject, the confessing Protestant Christ, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Frank-Walter Steinmeier in Germany, says or asks, how much religion can the state bear with? Asking this question in 2014 to a foreign minister is only a rhetorical question. A view to the civil war in Syria, the re-emerged war in Iraq, the re-escalating conflict in the Middle East reveals more than clearly that religion creates conflicts and is basis for a majority of conflicts today, or makes their solution much more complicated. It would be much better to completely keep away from politics. Are these the teachings from history in the year of the 500th anniversary of Reformation? Maybe we shouldn't make things so simple to ourselves. So, Steinmeier, as little as there is a state, is there the religion? The Christian, Jewish, and Muslim extremists who are disseminating hatred, fuel wars, have nothing to do with followers of a religion living in peace with each other, unquote. However, this is a surprising perception, because actually Mr. Steinmeier should know that extremists and the peaceful have something in common. It's their holy book, respectively the Bible and the Quran. A further, frequently expressed view from various parties is that the extremists are instrumentalizing religion for their interests. That means they are not in favor of religious concerns. Carla Jäckel writes in the forum Open Religious Politics, says, all right, we need an instrumentalization prophylaxis, and goes on, those who follow current media reports cannot deny the orgiastic murder in the name of God, but may there be different motives, killing with lust, as revealed in the beheading videos of the IS, can never be justified on religious grounds. All world religions have a strong ethic of peace. The interesting thing about these views is that they themselves use religion for their own purposes. That means they instrumentalize them, use them as a tool by focusing on ethic of peace and revealing it as the only thing which doesn't fit. Bible and Quran are a conglomeration of various stories in different contexts and importances, where everything can be justified besides one thing, democracy in its Western interpretation. But besides this everything, for example, pacifists find the sentence, then they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And the extremists may find Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I'm a mighty man. The holy books emerged in times when other mentalities prevailed in Central Europe, and Herbert Gell asked some years ago where to put these toxic papers. That means where to put these cruel texts from the founding phase of Christianity or religion. In Christianity, peace apostles sometimes use the argument that the New Testament of the Bible, where Christianity emerged as universal religion, with Jesus as the Savior, has nothing to do with the bloodthirsty Old Testament of the Bible that was established as a tribal religion of Jews on the theological faculty of Humboldt University in Berlin. Today, there is a fierce dispute about the God of carnage. A professor of theology and dogmatics had taken up an old recommendation of the renowned theologic scientist Adolf von Harnack to abolish the canonic document of the Old Testament of the Protestantism. This was condemned as a new edition of Protestant anti-Judaism, and ever since there is open hostility in this faculty. This is just something about the so-called dispute about the prophet's beard, who was right, who was wrong, but this dispute reveals the intolerance in the fight for truth. The former Bishop of Hamburg, Maria Jepsen, was asked once what she thought of the many violent passages in the Bible up to genocide. Her answer was just brief: I just don't read these paragraphs. This is obviously something like a wellness or a feel-good religion. However, these are just half-truths. Let me quote some parts of, and maybe you can tell me whether it's from the Old or New Testament. First thing, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than your whole body to be thrown to hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. And where is that? That's the preacher of the Sermon of the Mount. Or another quote, do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and the mother against her mother-in-law, and man's enemy will be living with him in the same house. Who loves father or mother more than myself is not worth of myself, and same thing is true for mothers. Third quote, the Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who has ears, let him hear. And a fourth thing, and he said to him, go to the world and preach the gospel of the entire Genesis. Who is baptized will be salvated, but who doesn't will be damned. This comes from the Markus Gospel, which is so friendly with all the people, and you can continue with that. There are so many. I won't talk about the John's Apocalypse, but it was so interesting that John is called Ivan in Croatian. That's really interesting. So this would be a very suitable thing to say. It is a proclamation of Ivan. So what is peaceful about it is only in theologists' mind. So religious means claim to power. So the first sentence in the first commandment of the Christ says, I am your God, and you must not have any other gods beside me. This claim to power can only be put through with violence. And so far it means religion is violence. It marginalizes. Catholic means literally the whole thing. And Islam means peace through devotion to God. This means that when all people have become Muslims, then peace will prevail. This is why Islam has a peace mission. Those who do not believe into this one only exclusive God are non-believers, and through their non-faith they show that they deny God's existence. And Charlemagne said, they who don't believe will have to believe. In the beginning of the Quran, in the first verses of the surah, it says, in the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, love and praise Allah, the Master of all world inhabitants, who will master the world. We will only want to serve you and flee for misericord. And in Surah 47, verse 5, and when you meet in regular battle those who disbelieve, smite their necks, and when you have overcome them, either release them as a favor or by taking ransom until the war lays down its burdens, that it is ordinance, and have punished them himself. But he has willed that. But he has willed that. Deus vult. This is the war of battle. In Berlin, recently I've experienced, also through a Muslim integration officer, that Muslims do not want to have Koran quotes. They don't want to hear Koran verses any longer. God has the monopoly of violence in these points of view. Strict religious people can only become violent if they do it on behalf of their God, may it be to put through its will or to prevent damage. Let's go to the images I announced. These images scare me to date. 9/11, these two figures suffice in order to go back to the terror attack to the World Trade Center in New York, and the black flags of the militia of the Islamic State saying there is no God, there is only Allah, is something that we see every day in the media. Further photographs of executions, I don't want to show them. But the equalization, peace-loving Christianity versus violent Islam is just wrong. Let's go back 20 years. In 1993, where the world religious war map looked different, Christians fighted against Christians, Christians against Muslims, Hindus against Muslims, communists against Buddhists, Buddhists against Hindus, and so on and so forth. Let me go further back and explain the basic equality in Islam and Christianity. Deus vult. It's God's will. This was the battle cry of the Knights ever since the First Crusade in November 1095. This expression testifies to religious messages that is also prepared to use violence to reach its goals. And according to the model of the fair war, it was morally justifiable and even wanted by God. The crusade as war of the papal church became, this is the intention of the statement, led in the representation of God. What does this mean in detail? The Orient Crusades, that means the ones everybody knows, were bloody incidents, and it became clear that due to the conquering of Jerusalem, it wasn't only against Muslims, but against all Christians. That means also against the local Jews. In the Third Crusade, where the noble knight, King Richard of England, called Lionheart, we know that from the Robin Hood film, where the noble knight comes across and helps everybody. This Lionheart ordered on 20 August 1191 to kill 2,700 Muslim prisoners, men, women, children from the Akkon garrison through the executions of the sword. These crusades, most of you may have heard of them, were not the only of this kind. 1147, there was a crusade against the Wends. The bishops had appealed to them against the Slavs. In 1150, it was a crusade against Finland. On the sarcophagus of the Bishop Heinrich from Uppsala, the phases of the crusades are depicted. On the right-hand side, the arrival, the fight against the Heth, and then the baptization of the surviving Heth. 1198, we had the crusade against the Prussians, and 1209 to 1229, the crusade against the Albigensians, also called Catharians, judges, church judges made judgments that were implemented by the secular violence. The Catharians from Carcassonne were even burned on funeral pyres. And 1410, in the crusade against Lithuania and Poland, the Battle of Tannberg was lost by the Teutonic Order. So let's change the scenario. In the meantime, since the 7th centenary, the Middle East situation changed. With the emergence of Mohammed in 610, our time, modifications came across that revealed 620 to 632 in the conquering crusades of Mohammed. There were also defeats, like in 625, the Battle of Uhud, with Cut Capita, here you have the soldiers of Muhammad's army. 630, he could conquer Mecca, where all other god illustrations, the so-called ideals, were deleted. Up to 750, the nations of the Eastern, Southern, and Western Mediterranean became controlled by Muslim governors by means of weapons. For the Christian Central Europe, 732 was a key year when Karl Martel could conquer the Caliph troops on the field of Poitiers. Let's go one step further. In 1492, the last Moorian Caliph Muhammad XII handed over the Alhambra on 2 January 1492 to the Catholic kings. This led to the defeat of the last Moors in Spain. 31st of March 1492, the Catholic queens Isabella of Castilian and Ferdinand of Aragon laid down the Alhambra decree for all Jews who did not want to convert, to expel them, and in the governments of war, Jews and heretics were followed and forced to turn to Christianity. After everything had been Christianized or re-Christianized in Europe, the Spanish concentrated on taking the good news of the gospel to Southern America, while Pope John Paul II had requested the predecessors of the Latin American indigenous inhabitants for the genocide on behalf of the Christians. Pope Benedict XVI in May 2007, in front of the Conference of all Latin American bishops, the discovery of the continent had been carried out by the Catholic Church without using any violence. At no time, said Benedict, the proclamation of the gospel would have been an alienation of the pro-Columbian culture or a domination of a foreign culture. In fact, Benedict said that Christ had been the savior for the indigenous people that they had longed for ever since. In Europe, Christians started to fight Christians. After the terrible times of Reformation, we had the terror regime of John Calvin with a prominent victim, Michael Servetus, a humanist, scholar, a doctor and anti-Trinitarian theologist who was burned on a funeral pyre in 1553. Another example are the iconoclasts in the sense of Martin Luther and other reformers, in particular Calvin and Zwingli. From the Peasants' War, 1524 to 1526, where the nobles were supported by Luther with unprecedented brutal attempts. Luther said he wanted to kill the peasants as one would kill a great dog, an ill dog. During the Huguenot Wars in France, 1562 to 1598, one of the culminant points in 1572 was the St. Bartholomew's Days massacre of Catholics and French Calvinists and Huguenots. These battles were a predecessor of the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, between Catholic League and Protestant Union. The brutal acts of war themselves, but also the caused famines and epidemics, devastated and depopulated entire regions. In southern Germany, for example, it was only 1/3 that survived. And after the economic and social devastations through Marat soldiers, some territories affected by war needed more than one centenary to recover from the consequences. Execution was mainly carried out with the sword. But there were also new notions enriching the Christian culture. The hanging tree. Why building so many hanging trees? Many could also be hung on a tree, or the Swedes drink urine, manure and water were forced into the throat of the captured, their abdomen swell, and that was then pressed with timber. So that's waterboarding. The Westphalian Peace of 1648 helped to create calmness for some time. Now we will jump in time. I can only mention some details for just a red line and see what happened ever since the beginning of the 20th century in terms of major conflict with religious participation. Just to give you some examples. Starting with the genocide of German troops in Southwest Africa, today's Namibia, 1904 to 1908, in Hereros and Namas. Most of them died of thirst in the desert. Out of the 80,000 Hereros, 1905, only 12,000 had survived. The German troops were consecrated before their departure into the battle. This was the case in 1914 to 1918. First praying, then going to the battle. Or we pray before God, the right is God, and thus the emperor proclaimed, God with us. This is what said the emperor's castles. And what said Jesus on propaganda postcards down there on the right? And look, I am with you all days. War preaching preaching war, Protestant priests sent thousands of men into a heroic death, and the renowned Berlin theologist Reinhold Seeberg has stood in for the thesis, if by defending the fatherland you kill a Belgian soldier, you execute the work of the love on one's neighbor. And news of death on the commemoration, he died for his fatherland, with a sentence of the Bible, the first letter of John, chapter 3, we should lay down our lives for our brothers. Parallel to the First World War in the Osmanian Empire in 1915-16 is leading to the genocide against Armenians. In massacres and death marches, around 800 people are killed. Around 20 years later, it's the Second World War that starts, and the political religion of National Socialism is supported by German Christs and Catholic bishops. Our faith is our victory, says a Protestant church in Hamburg-Wonsbeck. Resistance fighters from Galen, in quotation marks, underlined all pro-Nazistic pastoral letters, and also the letters where bishops assured in 1941 that they have always supported Hitler's policy. The cruel atrocities and war they promoted corresponded to the holy will of God, and in April 1942, the Catholic bishop of the German army said what the leader and high commander of the army commands the soldiers. God hides behind all this with his will and his commandments. In the crusade against the Soviet Union, the Black Corps, the SS doesn't know any part in. When fighting the guards, shooters and battalions, there are no imprisoners. It was either life or death. And since 1941, with an inhuman terror, the German army killed Russian partisans with the High Command order where lynch law and collective violence were commanded to the Soviet for the Soviet civil population. The Germans were carrying the swastika, saying, "God with us." And these soldiers, the God with us soldiers, when they went back after a devastating defeat, they left blood trails of burned earth. Right after the defeat of Stalingrad, where weapons and anything were destroyed just like lodging possibilities. So cities, villages were burned, and mass evacuations were carried out, and the German troops devastated the entire area and plundered everything that was there. But this was not even sufficient. 30 years, since 1969 until 1998, Northern Ireland suffered from a conflict between Protestants and Catholics. Current state ceasefire. From April to July 1994, so within just some months, in Rwanda, a country with 94% of Christians in the population, with the support and justification of Catholic and Protestant priests, 800,000 until or even 1 million indigenous people, Tutsis, were killed with machetes. In July 1995, within just some days in Srebrenica, 8,000 Muslim Bosnians were massacred by Christian Serbs and put into mass tombs. And there won't be silence, there won't be peace as long as there are presidents who think they are a tool of God and call their own country as the country of God, saying, "God bless you, God bless America, nothing will change." Religious standards are absolute standards. Democratic values are always relative. In religion, it's about truth. In politics, it's about a compromise or a setting off of interests. As a murder machine, Christianity has been much more efficient than Islam. A conclusion. Christian churches and Islamic caliphates are not only fire accelerators for brutality, atrocities and hatred, but as Karl-Heinz Deschner said, who I'd like to conclude with, he said about Christianity, the biggest organizations of criminals of all times. Thank you for your attention.